All right, everyone. My name is John Burke. I'm going to be moderating today's discussion and presentation. Leading the presentation is Andrew here. Obviously, you've been communicating with everyone so far. Before we get into the conversation and the presentation, I just want to let everyone know, if you haven't heard, there is a Q&A box in the bottom part of your screen. Feel free to drop any questions there. I'll be moderating that. I'll ask questions throughout, and if we don't get to it, we'll get to it the questions section after the presentation's over. So feel free to drop any questions in there. With Andrew, we're joined by Bradley Tuck, Glenn Phillips, and Evan Collins from Integra. They're going to join us in the Q&A section after as well. So we'll have some experts on the Integra line answering any questions as well. So Andrew, lead the way.
Thanks, John. So welcome, everybody. The topic of this discussion is Integra Adhesives. So if you're a fabricator that's been using Integra for years and you just want to learn more, or if you primarily use bulk adhesive and you've been hand mixing colors and maybe you want to take a fresh look at possibly using more cartridge adhesives in your operation, in either case, we hope to present you with some useful information that you can use to determine if there's any improved efficiencies or current challenges that we can help you solve. So let me get to the next slide here. All right, so here's our agenda for today. First, we're just going to be kind of an overview about why you might consider Integra, who might be a good fit for you. We'll talk a little bit about just cartridge adhesives versus bulk hand mixing and what are the pros and cons of the different systems, and where one situation might be better than another. We're going to learn about the specific products in the Integra line, and then we're going to be talking about some logistical things that we get asked a lot about, the particulars on finding matches and how to go about that. And, that's certainly a thing that we get asked about that we could try and shed some light on for you guys. And then we'll go to that Q&A section. It's very important that we want to, again, create as much value for you guys. So address your questions, your concerns, your comments. So we'll try and leave as much time for that as we certainly can. So to start off, we want to look at, well, really, what is the problem set? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities that fabricators are facing when it comes to seaming and mitering, in particular, other applications for adhesives around the shop, where this might be a benefit for you? So talking with fabricators, probably a big and most common pain point I hear all the time is matching white quartz. So there's, you guys have all seen, the prevalence of quartz, in the marketplace. There's been more and more quartz. The white has been going strong for a long period of time, and it can certainly take a good deal of time and effort and attention to get the results the way you want, and some people still struggle. So even if you have the skills to do good matches on white quartz, it might take you a lot of time and effort. So if you can get the same results or better in less time, then most people would probably consider that a win. The next thing is time and labor. So again, when I sit and talk with fabricators, or I talk to people on the phone and I ask people, what are the concerns, what's the difficulties in your business, what are your challenges? Over and over again, I hear time and labor is a huge concern. Everyone wants to be, profitable. Everyone wants to make as much money as they can. Everyone wants to be as efficient as they can. Something that we talk about a lot is, what makes up the components of your costs, right? So in a typical job, just to use kind of round numbers, obviously every shop is going to be different, but typically we hear, you got 45% of your costs are material, you got 45% of your costs are your labor, and then usually you got about 3% in consumables. So even if we slightly increase the cost of the consumables by a couple percentage points, but we're able to tackle the time and labor component, usually that's a net positive for the fabricator. So we certainly want to address that. Next is consistency. So this ties in with scale, really. So as you look at every shop is different, but the general maturity cycle, we have a lot of shops that start off as, owner operators, small businesses, handful of fabricators. For the bigger fabricators, if you have five or more fabricators, you're probably starting to think, if you're either an owner or an operator, you probably in the back of your mind are thinking about consistency, making sure that if you hire a new person, are we able to kind of produce the same kind of results? If my really skilled fabricator that I had for years, if he leaves or retires, you want to make sure you have that kind of consistency. And if you're a smaller shop and you're looking to scale up, hire some new people, you certainly want to put things in place to kind of control that quality going forward. Another thing that's happening right now, kind of an industry trend, is the porcelain and sintered materials. We're certainly seeing a lot more of that, and a lot of these things have been around for a long time, but we're seeing more of that in the marketplace. And the manufacturers of the porcelain and sintered materials, whether it's Neolith or Sapien Stone or Crossville or Dowtile or Decton, any of these people, any of the players in this market, they're certainly investing lots of money in producing these materials and trying to drive that demand. And, a lot of the fabricators we talked to have been fabricating stone for many, many years, but there's still a lot of concern about, it's not always the most popular topic. A lot of people don't really like working with these materials because of that, but we want to make sure, putting more tools in your toolbox. Do you know the right glues to use for these scenarios, whether it's indoor, whether it's outdoor? So we certainly want to help you solve those challenges. And then lastly is all the other kinds of products. So kind of related to that, you got solid surface, you've got the granite, all the natural stone products. Some of the natural stone products are more temperamental than others. You have the glass kind of based products. You have like the terrazzo, kind of like the vitrazo, and there's some competitors to that kind of product with the Portland cement and chunks of glass. And so a fabricator today might be called on to fabricate a lot of different materials, even within one day. And it's good to have the right glues, and even better to have one glue that can do all or many of these kinds of products. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we're looking at Integra and why cartridge adhesives in general. To kind of kick off that discussion, place I wanted to start with. This is an old Integra video. I don't know what year this was shot. It's been around for a little while. If you've been on YouTube, maybe you've seen this. And this is kind of a shootout, and we've done this with cartridge adhesives going back many years. And I talked to a lot of fabricators, and so you know what, there's not really a problem. We can fabricate really fast without the cartridge adhesives. But when we always do these shootouts, we find out almost every time that when we have two crews, we've got one using cartridges, one using hand mixing in bulk, and then trying to match the colors manually. It's always faster with the cartridges. And some people might argue with us. We'll see if we get some people in the Q&A, but in the test that we've done. So here's an example from this video, and this is lamination, but the same is true with miters. What they did is we had the two crews. They're both doing a lam on the same material. Now the crew from Integra had twice as many linear feet, or linear inches, I should say, same difference. The Integra team finished up at 3 minutes, 48 seconds, as you can see in this little screen grab. I'd love to show you the video, but unfortunately video doesn't translate great on these Zoom platforms, but we'll put this YouTube link in the chat, and we'll also send this in an email at the end. I encourage you guys to watch this video. It's a pretty good one. And you see the traditional methods finished at close to 6 minutes. Now, if you just looked on the face of it, that would be 35% faster. But again, it was twice as much area on the lam. So it ends up really being 68% faster. So it's really a small amount of time in terms of minutes, but as a percentage basis, that little bit counts, and plus the other performance benefits in terms of strength and longevity versus polyesters. So there's definitely a compelling argument to be made, and there's only so many rocks to look under in the shop where you can find 68% time savings. So that's certainly one reason to start looking at cartridge adhesives. The next thing is just diving down a little bit more specifically. So I don't really believe that there's a one size fits all for fabricators. Every situation is different. Every shop is different. And, to be perfectly honest, I think not every shop is maybe the same candidate. Is it right for you is really the question. And I'm not going to tell you that our product or Integra's product is every shop should be using it. You're going to make your own decisions. But what kinds of companies and what kinds of situations are maybe the best candidates for cartridge adhesives? So I would say, to start off with, if you look at these bullet points, anyone fabricating both stone and solid surface, that's to me a no-brainer. A lot of shops either started off as solid surface shops, and then they started doing some quartz along the way. Maybe they started doing some natural stone as well. I hear that. Maybe you're a stone shop and started bidding on some Corian jobs. Maybe you acquired a stone shop along the way. But in either case, if you have a wood shop and a solid surface shop and a stone shop, certainly there's some efficiencies to having one glue that can be used in both sides of the business. Any fabricators that are looking to scale up, but they're concerned about consistency. So if you want to just start growing, and you want to start going after, maybe you only do residential work, you want to start going after commercial work, you want to grow in any way that you can, but you still want to keep that consistency together, you would maybe be a candidate for cartridge adhesives. If you do a high percentage of quartz, so this varies a lot. Whenever I'm meeting with fabricators, I always ask, what percentage of quartz do you do? What percentage granite do you do? And I see wildly different answers. I still talk to a lot of shops that are doing 60, 70, 80% natural stone. I say, wow, great, more power to you. I know a lot of people love to push the natural stone. And then I talk to other people where quartz is a really important part of their business. They may not love fabricating quartz, but they say, you know what, this is a huge part of our business and we got to do it and do it well. So if you do a lot of quartz, if you do a lot of white quartz, I'm sure a lot of people watching this will probably say that applies to them. You would probably be a good fit for cartridge adhesives. I would say I talk to some shops, they do mostly custom work. I say, how many times through a year would you do the same color again? And someone says, you know what, I almost never do the same color twice in a year. Okay, then maybe that doesn't make as much sense. But I talk to a lot of people say, you know what, we have a certain fast food chain or something like that. We're doing such and such color quartz. We're doing Caesar stone, pure white, whatever it is. We're doing that at least 10, 11, 12 times a year. So if that's the case, you got to think about all the time that's wasted matching the same color over and over again. Here you get a cartridge of Integra Glacier White, and it's always Glacier White. No matter what the day of the week it is, or which person is doing it. So that's another thing. So then, commercial works, that kind of goes hand in hand with white quartz. But I hear from a lot of fabricators that do a lot of commercial work, they at some point down the line, they switch to an Integra and they had never looked back. So if you do a lot of commercial work, maybe this is a good fit for you. And then if you do a significant amount of porcelain, that's kind of geographical too. I know a lot of people that fabricate, kind of in the interior of the country say, you know what, I almost never fabricate porcelain. I don't really do that. Some people in LA and New York, you see a lot more porcelain being fabricated, and that probably just increasing. So if you're doing a lot of those kinds of materials, then it's that's something to think about. And then anyone looking to improve, if you're happy with the way that things are going, if you got your current process and it really seems to be working for you, then if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you really are looking for improved efficiency, if you are looking for speed, if you're looking to get more done with less, if that applies to you, then this is maybe something to think about. So that's kind of wraps up the first section before we start talking about the specific products. I'll kind of take a minute right here and I'll extend the floor to a second for the Integra folks. I mean, do you guys have anything to add at this point? And I'll take a quick second and look at some of the comments and questions. I see the chat's been kind of filling in. So any of you guys have anything to add to that part before we start talking about the products?
Yeah, Andrew, Glenn Phillips with Integra. Yeah, just kind of wanted to just piggyback off what you were mentioning about, consistency, especially when it comes to the color matching. I know you had touched base on it about the whites. The whites can be tricky. And, when you have a couple different eyes looking at a particular color, your idea of a white glacier, of a white matching glacier white is going to be different from, Bradley's or mine. And so, the whites, from everyone's white's going to be a little bit different. But with a cartridge adhesive, you basically have a uniform, you're going to have a uniform color, whether it's, like you mentioned, glacier white, white chocolate, white linen, all the different, and again, I'm just kind of rattling off all the different whites that we have. And it seems like every month, the quartz manufacturers are coming out with new white choices.
Absolutely.
On top of each other. So, we're just trying to eliminate, the guessing work of the fabricator. And again, I know that you had touched on just, the efficiency, the speed of it, and just trying to take the guesswork out of it. And again, if someone is, fabricators are looking to get a job done a lot quicker, or even a little quicker, and next thing you know, they add a little bit too much hardener, and next thing you know, it starts to yellow. You just can't, put a price tag on the time it takes to send somebody out to go fix it and so forth. So just to have that consistency out of a cartridge is very, very important.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you kind of touched on it too, which is, I hear from, most people have one or two guys that they really, really trust. And for a lot of people, that's themselves, right? But then that's the labor challenge. And, the younger generation just does not seem to want to work in fabrication as much. I hear that all the time, that people have a hard time finding the next generation of fabricators. And then say you get someone who's trainable, how long does it take to get them to a certain point? With this, you can get somebody pretty quickly, put a cartridge in their hand, and they're making pretty nice whites right away. I mean, I'm not saying you don't need to develop those skills. Those skills are great and they're important. And if you're doing a real custom job on something marble, maybe you need to vein match and do all sorts of things that you can't, well, we can talk about that too. There's ways of doing that with the cartridges as well. But there might be some situations where you'd want to hand mix a color. You certainly want to have those skills too. But it makes sense in certain scenarios. So, all right, well, now we'll kind of dive into the actual products. So the main product, and this is where you guys might learn a little bit about the Integra products, because when I hear most people kind of refer to Integra just as Integra. And a lot of people don't know that there's some of the, I talk to a lot of people that aren't aware of the Integra Ultra, they aren't aware of the Zero, they aren't aware of the differences between them. So when most people say, yeah, use Integra, I'm on the Stone Fabricators Alliance page and I'm talking to people like that. And this term gets thrown around kind of just synonymous with Integra. So this is the standard cartridge. It's available in different sizes. It's available at 250 mil, a 500 mil, and a 100 mil. And that 100 mil I'll talk about is a really convenient size. Maybe you guys aren't aware that this exists, but it fits in a regular caulking cartridge. So for installers, that's a really great solution where you can kind of get in and out, don't have to worry about mixing colors in the home. And that's a great packaging option. The 250 mil is far and away the most popular. And if you're doing large jobs with one color, on the availability, there's not quite as many. It's not available in the huge line of colors, and they're not in stock everywhere. But in some situations, you might want to look at the 500 mils. Now, this was a glue that's been designed for solid surface, and years ago, they discovered that it just happened to work really well for granite and stone surfaces, and shops started using it. And now at this point, it's got a really long industry track record. It's been out there for well around over 10 years, probably closer to 15 years. And there's a large amount of color range available. And this is a very popular product that's used up and down throughout the country on all sorts of different materials. And so this is a great option. And this is an acrylic-based adhesive. Again, it fits in it's a 10-to-1 cartridge. So there's some different cartridge systems out there. So you want to make sure you have the right gun. This is a product that you've probably run into and you probably have heard of. And so I want to kind of contrast that against the Zero. So the Zero is a very similar product, but this was designed for stone. And this has several differences, but the key difference is in the no drip consistency. So the no drip products became popular a couple years ago. As many of you know, the history, this was kind of, a handful of people were involved in this, but really Glue Boss was responsible for kind of pioneering this product, and there was an acquisition. So where Integra picked up that technology, and now it's out there as this surface bonder Zero. So this is a great product, and what it does a lot of things. So number one, it results in less waste. So you end up with not as much glue on the floor. It's not running all over the place. The standard product has a kind of a different consistency that really solid surface fabricators tend to really like. But for stone fabricators, that expectation is really more on the knife grade side, where they want to have put a glue on the edge and it's going to stay exactly where you put it. And that's what this product does. I know a lot of people do their miters, and you can end up with pits and voids in areas where the adhesive wants to run out of the joint. So having that no drip consistency really helps with that. So this product is available in a reduced range of colors, but still 90 colors is a lot. And the most popular colors, really only like 20 or 30 colors are 70, 80% of the market. You guys know that you're doing, whites and off whites and, in some cases blacks as the vast majority of what's on the market right now. And there is a bit of more toughness to this product. It does have some rubberization kind of to it. So there is some increased strength in terms of impact. We did at an SFA event a while back, we did a big quartz miter, and we picked it up overhead and slammed it into the dumpster where all the remnants are. And this product is definitely very tough and very, so if strength is important to you and saving time and eliminating waste on the miters are important to you, then this might be a product to look at. And The other thing to keep that's important is that this is a completely interchangeable product with the XI. So it's available in the same colors with the same color names, and it fits in the same guns and uses the same tips. So that's really important. So if you like to use XI and you call Integra, you call Chemical Concepts, and you say, well, we have one in stock in the Zero. They're perfectly interchangeable in that respect. So if availability is an issue, you need it right away, you could use one or the other. Both work fine. And then you should also know that you could use the same guns and mixers. So we get asked about that a lot, where that's important for people to realize. The last product that's involved in really mitering and seaming is the Integra Ultra. So this is a different chemistry. Both the Zero and the XI are considered, our methyl methacrylates or acrylic adhesives. This is a different chemistry. They're called polyaspartics. They're kind of in the urethane families. And this is truly an indoor-outdoor adhesive. So the acrylic adhesives, can weather the elements outside. They won't break apart. I know some of the polyesters and some of the other glues out there just cannot handle the UV and they will break down. So the acrylics are very strong outside, but if you're doing a bright white, there will be a certain, it's something that's just part of the nature of the beast. There will be some yellowing involved in all acrylic adhesives. The Ultra product is with this chemistry is truly a zero yellowing product, and it will stay UV stable. So if you're doing an outdoor kitchen, this is definitely the right tool for the job. Also, it's low VOC and not hazardous. Now, on the negative side, it's maybe not the right tool for every job. I know there's some other glue companies out there that are selling, polyaspartic kind of chemistries and they're kind of recommending this for everything, whether you're doing an indoor or an outdoor. To me, I think if you can use the XI on a job or you can use the Zero on a job, you'd be better off. They're more affordable. They cure a little bit faster and they cure a little bit harder. The urethanes can be a little bit on the soft side, which is actually, you want that little bit of flexibility in an outdoor where you might have more expansion and contraction, but you should know that it's a different animal. And this is a 2-to-1 ratio, so it will not work in the same gun. I know everybody wants one gun for everything, but this is just the nature of the beast. You will need to have a different gun and different mixing tips for this product. So before I go into the substrate bonder, I think that's probably another opportunity to pause. Just talking about those 3 products for seaming and mitering. I'll open that back up to the Integra folks. Anything you guys would want to add at that point?
Talk about the Ultra a little bit more. Again, I know that you had touched on some of the flexibility in the bead, which allows it to really work nicely outside with the expansion and contraction, temperatures and things like that. One of the other nice things that is really a nice advantage when you're talking about it for indoor use, you can polish, and you can actually take a denatured alcohol and put it on the seam, and you can kind of make it look like it's a textured finish. So, for instance, if you have like a sintered, or I'm just going to say Decton, for instance, and you have kind of have that textured feel to it, you can kind of buff out that seam. Like I said, with the denatured alcohol, and make it look like it has that same type of finish. So it doesn't have that high gloss seam. It just kind of takes it out of there, which is a nice, application. So everything looks uniform.
Yeah, and for those fabricators that are on the call, I think I'm hearing, talking to a lot of people, that there's a big uptick in outdoor kitchen kind of work. So if you're seeing that too, a lot of people are stuck at home. They maybe want to, they're maybe skipping this year's vacation because of the virus crisis. And so maybe that they'll take that money that they're going to put into a vacation, try and beautify their outdoor space, put in a pool, whatever they want to do, try and get more luxury living at home. So if you get called on to, fulfill those needs for these people, I'm sure you want to make sure you have the right tool in your toolbox to go out and do these outdoor kitchens. So this might be relevant if any of you watching were not aware of this product.
I say, Andrew, I will say that coming out of this over the last month, as more of our customer base is up and running, I've seen a lot more people reaching out and looking to expand their outdoor dining areas and things like that. So it's definitely, listen, everyone would like to be outside as much as we can, right? So, and even more so than ever, it seems that seems to be a demand. So, Ultra is definitely something that, if you guys get those types of opportunities, please, definitely reach out to the Chemical Concepts team.
Yep. So we'll quickly touch on, Integra is probably known mostly for seaming and mitering and for those kinds of joint adhesives. We'll talk about a couple of the other products just real briefly. It's probably the main products are the seaming products. This substrate bonder is an interesting product. If you're doing a lot of solid surface, a lot of people are using silicone, for attaching the substrate, whether that be plywood or marine grade plywood or some kind of composite to the underside. Now, silicone, as we all know, takes a decent amount of time to cure. It takes really 24 hours. You'll have some kind of grab with that, but you want this certain amount of handling strength so that when you glue this together and then move it to somewhere else in the shop, that it's not going to fall apart. So this is a product that has a 15-minute handling time. It's still a pretty low-cost product. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. Really great for putting on substrates. And then we have a lot of people in the 2cm market as well. So if you're putting substrate on the back of quartz or other kinds of surfaces, you might want to look at this product too as an alternative to whatever your current substrate adhesive that you're using. The next adhesive I want to touch on is the rotting adhesive. I know rotting is also a contentious issue with fabricators. A lot of strong opinions there, whether you should rot or you shouldn't rot, or whether a sink saver is enough. And there's certainly been a lot of products that have come out in the last couple of years to try and help fabricators get the countertops to the customer's door in one piece. But rotting is still important to a lot of people on the most delicate stones. It's definitely important. And I definitely believe that a lot of the people that are in the anti-rotting camp are maybe have that opinion because they've used rotting glues in the past that didn't work, or they've used combinations of rotting and adhesives that weren't compatible. There's still a lot of metal rot out there, and I'm not going to say all metal rot is bad. I'll get in a lot of trouble at the end of this. But the combination of mild steel rods and polyester is definitely a deadly combination. And I've heard a lot of horror stories. If you go on the SFA and you research countertop cancer, which as a lot of people know it, polyester is a porous glue, and you will invite rust. And so I know some people use stainless rods, which are expensive, but you can use the right glue, use a fiberglass rod or a reinforced fiberglass rod. There's lots of those kinds of products out there, and really get much better results from your rotting much faster. Same benefits that we talked about cartridge adhesives apply, in that you're taking away a lot of variables from the process. So from the quality control standpoint, you wonder how much hardener is used, how well is it mixed, whatever. This kind of makes it somewhat foolproof. And we just see in our testing, I'll show some of the testing on the next page. Hopefully you guys can read that. So this is unreinforced granite versus reinforced granite, and then versus reinforced granite where it was applied, the adhesive was applied while wet. So you'd see scenario B, it was cut wet, blown really dry, removed most of the water. Scenario B, it was cut wet, we only blew out the large droplets, and the stone was still visibly damp. And although it was not as strong as when you did it when it was dry, it was still 3,200 PSI, much stronger than the unreinforced stone. So if you want to move quickly and you want to be able to do rotting even while the stone is wet or damp, and this is, and I know a lot of companies are really happy of having made this switch and really gained a lot of efficiency from that. So anyway, that's kind of our wrap up on the products themselves. Next, we'll just kind of talk about actually, getting color matches, looking at some of the tools that are out there. We probably get asked about this stuff more than anything about the products themselves. And people want to save time. They want to get to the match that they want as fast as possible. So we want to help people do that. So what's out there for the fabricator to find color matches? So the first thing I'll talk about is we have these fan decks, and you can see this picture, which is this little card that's a nice little handy reference tool. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll send you a fan deck. And you can see examples of popular stone colors, and you can get an idea of what the right match is for those popular stone colors. So that's an option. You have two options as far as the online color match tool. I'll show you that really briefly. So let's see, everyone should still see my screen. Let me close this out here. So hopefully everybody can see. Can everybody see this Integra screen here? So this is the color match tool, and I'm on the Integra site. I'm kind of zoomed in here. So this is the color match tool. You would get there from the site, you would click on color match, and then there's a search bar right here. You could search for whatever your, whether it's you could search by the manufacturer. You don't even need to know the whole name. If you know part of the name, you can find the match. We also have on our website, we have our own tool so that you don't have to jump around between websites. This is our seaming adhesive color match tool. You'll see all the different manufacturers here. If I type in, say, pure white, you'll start to see matches pop up right away. There's a little bit of a delay, I think, because I'm screen sharing here. But yeah, hopefully you guys all see that. And you'll see, you could here's Caesar Stone pure white. You can see what the match is, and makes it very easy and fast to find the matches that you're looking for. The other thing I wanted to show you guys was the app itself. And I'm going to share my screen from my phone real fast. So yes, we want to continue. So does everybody see my phone at this point? You should see my phone screen. So I have the Integra app queued up right here, and this is what the phone looks like. And I'm just gonna. I have it downloaded. You can go to the App Store, whether you're Apple or Android, and you could download this app. And here's what it looks like. Here's your basic interface. So the main area that you're going to want to live is this first thing where it says color matching, and you can click right there. I'm just going to walk you through exactly how to do it. It takes you to this page. You can click on color charts, and then at this point, I can just scroll down and find exactly what I'm looking for. I'll click Cambria. And a color that people have been asking me a lot about lately is Scarab Bray. It's just the first one that came to my head. So I go down to Scarab Bray. I'm going to click that, and it pops right up. Here's what the match is. I know a lot of fabricators don't have computers. You know, if you're back in the shop, you're probably not going to run back, go to a desk. A lot of people don't have desks, but almost everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket now. So the app is really a great tool for the fabricator on the job if he wants to get his own color match. I know there's we always hear a lot about communication problems between the fabricator and the front office. The fabricator knows what glue they need, and they're delegating to the purchasing people to buy, and and so that's a source of frustration for people. So if we can give more control to the fabricator, help them find the color match that they need, we know that everyone's life is going to be a lot easier. The other thing I can do, if I don't know the manufacturer name, there's the search box right here. It works similar to what the online tool does. I'll pick another one that's a popular one, just White Zeus, if I could spell Zeus. There we go, Silestone, and you can, pop up right there. So even if you don't know the name of the manufacturer, I know it's confusing. There's a million manufacturers out there. And let's just say Lyra, that's another one. You can see right there what the match is. Another neat thing about the app is we have the natural stone gallery. So this is similar to the Fandex, where you can get pictures of actual seams with different, so you can get with different natural stone types, so you can get an idea of what your seam is going to look like. Now these seams are kind of big; they're like 1/8-inch seams, and that's done on purpose so that you could see what the glue actually looks like. If you're using a seam phantom and you're getting your seams nice and tight, you could certainly get a seam that looks even tighter than that for sure. But this does give you an idea of what the glue is going to look like. And then the last feature is this color swatches here. So this just gives you an idea. If you go by the name, you see, okay, I'm going to order lapis or whatever the color is. You could just quickly look it down and get an idea of, everybody's screen looks different. Everybody's brightness is different. So you got to take this with a grain of salt, but at least you could get an idea of what the different colors look like. So let me pull the main presentation back up, and while I'm doing that, I'll open that back up to the Integra folks. Anything you'd like to say about ordering or questions that you get on matching colors?
Well, one of the things real quick, since you have your app still up, if you can go back up the color charts real quick, when you just click on just about anything there if you would like, and then you can kind of see a reference right there on the top. Go back up to the top, and it'll tell you exactly what, whatever color match is available in whatever product. So XI is, all the colors that are listed on the right-hand side from Aberdeen all the way down there in Cambria are all going to be available in XI. But then you'll see a Z for 0 and then U for ultra. And those are also, the other products that
Right.
that you're going to be able to see for color matching. So you'll be able to know if it's available. And, most of those products are going to be available through Chemical Concepts. So definitely, it's just a good way to kind of just cross-reference yourself before reaching out and finding the answer.
Yeah. So you see that little Z there next to the white chocolate. So that indicates that that color is available in Integra Zero. So that's a handy thing to kind of keep in mind. So that's a good point. Okay, so now I'm going to get back to the presentation here, and let's pull the presentation back up. All right, does everybody see this now? Okay, so we talked about color matching. Okay, so that wraps up pretty much the content portion of the, we're going to get to the Q&A in just a second. Just talk about, for those of you, maybe you guys are familiar with Chemical Concepts. If you're not, we have certainly other fabrication supplies that we can help you out with. You may have noticed Integra's kind of changed their business model. They used to sell mainly direct. Now they're kind of are pushing things towards distribution. You may know that we had our own line of seaming adhesives that we are phasing out and moving into Integra. So you'll see that we have these other things. So the value added for you guys is that, Integra was very good at what they did, but kind of a one-item vendor for everybody. So this hopefully makes it easier for everyone. You can make with one phone call, get your color matched adhesive, get your silicone, get your sink supplies, cladding facade anchors, support brackets, protection films, masking tapes, lots of products. We've also been helping a lot of companies deal with the ongoing virus crisis, whether you're looking for disinfectants and sanitizers, or if you're getting your showroom together when you want to put all sorts of tapes on the floors to indicate to customers where to stand. We can help you with those kinds of things. So before we move on to the Q&A, I just wanted to just flash up the contact information on the screen real quick. There's my personal email address. There's the email address for our sales and customer service requests. You can get our phone number. So if you want to learn any more or want to go ahead and get started, that's how you can reach us. And with that, I'll pass it over to John so we can start getting right to your questions.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Really appreciate it. Before we get into all the Q&A section, I do want to introduce Glenn's been involved with the presentation so far. He's Integra's Northeast Territory Manager. Joining him is Bradley Tuck, who's the Southeast Territory Manager. So anyone down south, you want to reach out to Bradley or us. And then we also want to introduce Evan Collins, who's the U.S. Sales Manager at Integra. Guys, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. So any questions you may have, feel free to drop in that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. But we did get a couple throughout the presentation, so I'll bring that up. One was about the shelf life of the adhesives. I did respond. I know you guys have a 2-year shelf life, but do you have any recommendations on storage, anything on that front?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Storage is really important, especially as we start to enter our hot months right here in the summertime, right? So, if you're going to take a cartridge out in your van or your truck and just, leave it in the back throughout the day, it's going to start getting into towards the 90s and even hotter inside the truck, right? So we want to kind of, eliminate keeping it out there, for a long period of time. So when you take it out, for the job, at the end of the day, you bring it back to your shop and store it, properly. What that means basically, you want to store it upright. You can leave the tip on it if it still has product left in it. You can leave the tip on, or if you prefer, you can also take the tip off. And then as long as you have the lid to the original cartridge, you can put the lid back on. But definitely you want to try to find, everything's not going to be climate controlled, as we know, but if you can find an area where it's, maybe, perhaps not really, really too hot, inside cabinet usually is a good idea. But again, storing it upright is half the battle. I can't tell you how many times I'll go into a facility and just see a lot of the cartridges just laying on their side. And definitely also you want to definitely rotate your stock. And I know that you mentioned the 2-year shelf life. Every cartridge does have a lot number and a date, manufacturer date on it as well. So it is pretty easy to be able to see that and rotate those products.
Appreciate that, Glenn. So I got another question here. As far as the outdoor kitchens are concerned, I know I've had customers. I know, Andrew, you've had this experience where they use the Zero or use the XI. Obviously, we did talk about the Ultra product, but can you kind of just delve a little bit more into that on really your biggest benefits as far as the Ultra is concerned?
Well, the biggest thing is just the flexibility in the bead. It's going to be it's UV rated. It's not going to discolor, and the discoloration in the seam is a big part of it. Especially people for the longest time I would see people just trying to use a darker granite for outdoor. Now people are starting to use different colors. Perhaps even lighter colors, which is a lot more, visible when you start getting down to your whites and those types of colors. So obviously having the UV protection in there is really important, and just being able to have that extra flexibility in the bead. If you were in a shop, one of the first things I can show somebody is you lay down an XI bead. And then a bead of the Ultra, 24 hours, go back the next day, take a look at it, and the XI bead is definitely more rigid, and whereas the Ultra bead kind of has the flexibility almost of a silicone. So obviously, again, when it comes to the movement in the stone being outside is a real benefit. Yeah.
Now, related to that, I mean, I've had some people ask me like, okay, so I know the XI or the Zero can yellow in the UV rays, in the direct sunlight. If say it's like a dark color, say it's like a black countertop. I don't know who's getting black countertops outdoors, but just for argument's sake, what would you guys say? Would you be able to get to use the XI or the Zero in that scenario with an outdoor, even if it was not a white or something like that?
I mean, we wouldn't recommend that. We would definitely recommend using the Ultra, just to make sure that there's no issues. And again, when you're doing an outdoor kitchen, the environment is very, very important, right? Everyone's environment is different. Whether someone's doing an outdoor space in Vermont or whether someone's doing an outdoor space in Stone Harbor, right? So there's a lot of different variables. We try to control them as much as we possibly can. But we definitely would recommend Ultra in those applications.
Appreciate that. Andrew, you'll have a nice thing. So I got a question here. Customer has been using the C30 product, which is very similar to our to Integra Zero. The C30 product in Opal for Corian. As far as Integra is concerned, what's a familiar color to that Opal color with Integra?
Yeah, so Integra's got a line of colors, a whole range of colors that have that kind of translucent kind of match all. And I don't know if there's a particular color of Corian that they were looking to match. So I guess the first thing I'd say is to look at the Integra color chart, and you could see what the exact match would be for that Corian surface. Now, some fabricators are going to go directly off the color chart and use the exact recommended glue for that product. Other fabricators want to just inventory a handful of colors, recognizing that, with really a strategic set, with 5 or 10 colors, you could probably match, 70, 80% of the things that are come through. And if you have to special order a color here and there, you can. So it just depends on how they want to do it and what makes sense for them. But if they're, a lot of people use that opal color as is kind of like a translucent color that would almost work for anything. Integra has a color called Chameleon that has been really popular for a long time that has that same property. There's actually a special filler in the Chameleon that also exists in that opal that kind of helps blend everything together. That's not necessarily in a lot of the other colors. So that's definitely, that chameleon is an option. And then feel free, Daniel, I see who asked that question. We could send you samples or whatever, and you could find exactly the color that that you're looking for.
I've got another question. I get this question a lot on my own. Custom colors. Let's say you can't find anything that there's a match. Is that an option with Integra?
It is, and generally, a lot of times we can, more than likely, we already have the color in our palette. It's just a matter of finding it, right, or just naming it, quote unquote. So, if it's something that we need to get a sample of, and send it to our lab, it's definitely something that we can do and turn around. As far as getting it into production, there's definitely a longer period of time before you would receive it. So obviously, if it's something that you need, by the end of the week, the turnaround time is not going to be quite that fast. So definitely some heads up on those types of jobs would definitely be recommended. But it's definitely something that we can turn around and get and recommend a color for those applications.
Yeah, here's a question that I get asked all the time, and it's about the finishing steps. So, I mean, if someone's using, say, on a miter or in a deck seam, obviously two different scenarios, would they use a different process to then polish that joint compared to using a polyester? Would they use the same process they would use with the polyester? What are your and even if they would, do you guys have any specific recommendations on what people should be doing to really get the best results there?
Bradley, would you like to handle this one?
Sure, I'll try. Usually, guys, when I'm in the shop, and I do a lot of solid surface work, so usually my guys in the shops there are just sanding those products down and getting a finish and polish them out. But when I go into the stone shops, most of my guys there, I try to use a razor blade and scrape that edge down. Then a lot of your miters, those guys are chamfering those edges anyways with a tool. So, every shop I go to has have different styles. So not one is, just pick one works best you and gets results you want, and don't get a lot of callbacks, and most of them are pretty happy. But as far as finishing, stone and quartz, I like to take a razor blade and scrape it down and get it the best way, and then you top polish depending on your surface.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different techniques and a lot of strong opinions on which way to do it. Whether you tape the edge or you don't tape the edge. So that's definitely something that I get asked about a lot. So that's helpful.
Now, I will say, taping the edges I always tape my edges before I seam them. Okay, guys, you tape that edge, and that just keeps that glue, because there are some surfaces out there that once the glue gets on them, it will leave a stain. So tape your edges. That way that prevents some of that staining issues.
Yeah. And I know something that seems to have just kind of come up, it seems like quartzites in the last couple of years have really kind of rapidly expanded into the market. I didn't used to really see them as much, maybe it's just me not noticing as much. And then bleeding, related to that. So, I mean, bleeding is definitely an issue that I get asked about a lot. I know that is the Ultra maybe a better product for products that might bleed? I know that some of the polyaspartics are maybe less likely to bleed than others. I mean, what are your thoughts on bleeding?
To me, I mean, the Ultra's a great product for that, but some guys are still looking, and that's cure times. It could be an issue for some people there. I have guys that actually seal their edges on some of our quartzites before they actually do it. But now, to me, as a glue manufacturer, I look at then you're basing your strength is based on your sealant and not the stone and the glue combining together. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. But a lot of people seal those edges. Because I've seen it many times. You go into a shop and look at quartzite, and you'll see those little spatter veins, cracks in the edges, and it starts turning yellow. Well, so some people, a lot of guys do that. Will seal those edges before they seam it. And that way, they say they can eliminate that process, or eliminate that from happening.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So sealing the edges, I've definitely heard about that as a possible solution when people are doing you know, materials that are susceptible to bleeding. So we always recommend doing, you know, if you got a big job of a sensitive material, you definitely got to know your stones and, you know, do a test if you can on a small piece, do a test miter, you know, especially on those high end jobs where you know that it's got to be perfect. It just helps everyone to have an idea of what you're getting into before you end up doing, you know, like 100 linear feet of material. So here's another question that just came through on using the XI or the Zero to repair scratches. And maybe not even just scratches, but just as a repair product. Have you guys seen people really using any of the Integra products for repairs?
Some instances you can use them there, but there again, you know, it's hard for me when you, like if you're repairing a chip or a scratch, sometimes it's hard to get the glue to stay in the chip. But I've seen some instances and there's some techniques where you can do it. But, you know, there again, it depends on the person.
And also, I was going to say, I would also, I would, out of the two products, if you were going to do that, Zero would be the one that you would want to use. You know, as thicker, obviously with the name, you know, the Zero bonder versus the XI. Zero would be the product that you would want to do that with.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a pretty big scratch or a pretty deep chip in order to get the Zero in there. And then, you know, there's certainly other products available. We have, you know, chip repair kits, and there's other companies that are making, that are really kind of maybe more designed for repair. But there's probably, there's some instances, you know, maybe if a corner falls up, and that's really kind of more like a seam, and you want to kind of glue that corner back on and then buff that and then try and hide it. That may be an area where an Integra type product would be the best option for repair. But if it's for small chips and scratches, there might be better tools for the job, my personal opinion. So we had originally slotted this for 45 minutes. You know, if there was like tons of questions flowing through, we felt like we could go a little bit over that, but we certainly want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know a lot of fabricators are kind of getting back to work. Maybe you were weren't shut down the whole time. Maybe you're just now starting to busy, ramping up again. So I think we'll probably try and, out of respect for everybody's time, try and wrap this up. So I guess one last call, I guess, any final questions you'd like us to address? If not, we'll kind of get this show on the road.
Just a simple question for you, Andrew. What's the easiest way to order?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for email orders, we have a special email address. We'll put that in the chat. It's orders@chemical-concepts.com. I'll share back the contact information that was on the screen here. So let me go back to the contact information page. Yeah, there you go. So I'll have that up on the screen. So that's our office number. Feel free to call. Feel free to email me personally if you have any questions as kind of a follow-up from this. Somebody asked, I saw, you know, will a copy of this be sent out? The answer is yes. We'll send a recording out. We're also going to send out a copy of the slideshow that accompanied this for future reference. And then feel free to contact us if we can help you. So again, thanks everybody for joining us. I hope you learned something. If we can help you going forward, we certainly want to be partners with everybody. You know, provide some value and really support you in trying to meet your goals, trying to solve your challenges. That's what we want to do. All right, so thanks. With that, we're going to sign off. Thanks to the guests. Thanks to John for emceeing. Thanks to Bradley, Glenn, and Evan. And I saw John jumped on there. So thanks to all you guys for your participation. And again, thanks most of all to the attendees that came along. We'll talk to you. We'll see you around. And thanks again for attending.